What if the most powerful healing medicines ever discovered aren't in a pharmacy? They're growing in ditches, forests, and abandoned fields that most people walk past every single day. Before pharmaceutical companies existed, there were healers, and they carried an accumulated knowledge of medicinal plants so precise and so effective that modern scientists are now spending millions in research grants just to confirm what those healers already knew. We lost that knowledge. One patent, one synthetic drug, one that's old-fashioned dismissal at a time. Today, we're digging it back up. Here are 20 lost medicinal plants that heal faster than modern medicine, ranked from extraordinarily powerful to absolutely jaw-dropping. Stick around because number 17 was banned from commercial sale, not because it was dangerous, but because it worked so well it threatened a pharmaceutical market. And number 20 is the plant that won a Nobel Prize. A Nobel Prize for something ancient healers already knew 2,000 years ago. Hit that subscribe button because this will permanently change how you think about medicine. Let's get into it. Number 1. Comfrey, the bone knitter. They called it knit bone, and for 2,000 years, from ancient Greece to the American frontier, comfrey was what healers reached for when someone broke a bone, tore a muscle, or suffered a bruise that wouldn't heal. Symphytum officinale contains allantoin, a compound that directly stimulates cell proliferation. It tells your body's repair cells to multiply faster, close the wound, and rebuild tissue at an accelerated rate. This isn't folk belief. A 2012 study in phytomedicine found patients using comfrey root extract for ankle sprains recovered faster than those using diclofenac gel, a commonly prescribed pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory. Traditional use: a poultice of fresh or dried root applied over the injury, wrapped, and left to work, or comfrey-infused oil massaged into bruised or inflamed tissue twice daily. Why it got lost? Comfrey contains alkaloids that can stress the liver if consumed internally in large amounts. Regulators used this legitimate internal concern to cast doubt over all comfrey use, including the topical application where evidence of safety and effectiveness is overwhelming, a plant with more clinical backing than half the sports injury creams on pharmacy shelves, still available, still working, still waiting. Number 2. Calendula, the war flower. Medieval soldiers carried this into battle. When you had a deep cut, no surgeon, no antiseptic, calendula was the difference between a wound that healed clean and one that killed you. Calendula officinalis contains triterpenoids and flavonoids with proven anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and tissue-regenerating properties. Clinical trials show it speeds healing of surgical wounds, burns, and skin ulcers, in one study outperforming petroleum jelly on post-surgical wounds with significantly less scarring. Traditional use: flowers infused in olive oil, strained, applied to any skin wound, burn, or infection. Pharmaceutical companies can't patent a flower, so they developed expensive wound creams attempting to replicate what calendula does naturally, without side effects, and for free. Number 3. Yarrow, the soldier's herb named after Achilles, Achillea millefolium, the Greek warrior who, according to legend, used this plant to stop his soldiers' wounds from bleeding on the battlefield. Whether that legend is literal or not, the medicine is real. Yarrow is both a hemostatic, stops bleeding, and a vulnerary, heals wounds. Most plants do one. Yarrow does both. Modern research confirms its alkaloids and flavonoids reduce bleeding time and promote tissue repair. Traditional use: pack fresh crushed leaves directly into cuts to stop bleeding. Make yarrow tea for fevers and inflammation. Use as a compress for infected wounds. It grows wild across North America and Europe. Free. Everywhere. And knowing where it grows could one day matter more than knowing where the nearest pharmacy is. Number 4. Mullein. The lung's best friend. That tall, fuzzy spike growing in vacant lots and roadsides everywhere? That's mullein, Verbascum thapsus, and for centuries it was the most trusted remedy for anything wrong with your lungs. Bronchitis, chest colds, deep wet coughs that won't clear. The leaves contain saponins, natural expectorant compounds that loosen mucus and help your lungs clear infection instead of letting it deepen. A 2003 study found mullein flower oil in ear drops performed as well as pharmaceutical anesthetic drops for ear pain in children with ear infections. Traditional use: strong tea from dried leaves strained through cheesecloth, 2 to 3 cups daily during chest infections. Mullein doesn't suppress your cough, it makes your cough productive. That's real healing, not symptom management. Number 5. Plantain weed. The sidewalk pharmacy. Not the banana, the low-growing weed pushing up through sidewalk cracks in virtually every country on Earth. Native Americans called it white man's footprint because it followed European settlers everywhere, Plantago major, one of the most reliable and accessible first aid plants on the planet. A clinical trial found plantain ointment improved healing of second-degree burns better than standard silver sulfadiazine treatment. The leaves contain orcubin, an anti-inflammatory glycoside, and soothing mucilage compounds. Traditional use: chew a fresh leaf and apply directly to a cut, sting, or bite. Pain and swelling reduce within minutes. Make a strong tea to wash wounds or draw out infection. It's everywhere. It's free. And we were trained to think real medicine should be rare and expensive. Plantain didn't get that memo. Number 6. Elderberry. The immune system's general Sambucus nigra. Called the medicine chest of country people since the 1600s. And modern immunology is proving that country people understood something that took us 3 centuries to confirm. Multiple randomized controlled trials show elderberry extract significantly reduces the duration and severity of influenza. A 2016 study found travelers taking elderberry had 50% shorter colds. Research shows elderberry anthocyanins directly inhibit influenza virus replication, binding to viral proteins and preventing them from entering cells. Traditional use: elderberry syrup at the first sign of illness, elderflower tea for fever, elderberry tincture through winter for immune maintenance. The science is in. This one isn't fringe anymore. Number 7. Oregon grape. The antibiotic shrub, Mahonia aquifolium. A spiky, ornamental shrub containing one of the most validated plant compounds in botanical medicine, berberine. Berberine is extraordinary. Broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against bacteria, fungi, and parasites. Documented anti-inflammatory effects. Blood sugar improvement comparable to metformin in some studies, and, critically, effectiveness against antibiotic-resistant bacteria that no longer respond to conventional treatment. For skin specifically, multiple clinical studies show topical Oregon grape extract significantly improves psoriasis and atopic dermatitis, in one study comparable to topical corticosteroids without the side effects of long-term steroid use. Traditional use: topical salve for skin conditions, tincture for digestive infections, root bark decoction for internal antimicrobial use. The berberine research has become so compelling that this plant is experiencing a full scientific renaissance. Number 8. Self-heal. The plant that meant it. Someone named this plant and they were not being poetic. Prunella vulgaris, self-heal, heal all. The most confident name in herbal medicine, earned by working on almost everything. Modern studies confirm genuine wound-healing properties, anti-inflammatory effects, antiviral activity against herpes simplex, and something particularly valuable. It disrupts bacterial biofilms, the protective coatings bacteria create that make certain infections extremely difficult to treat with antibiotics. Its specialty is mucous membranes, throat, mouth, gut lining. A strong self-heal gargle brings measurable relief to sore throats and mouth ulcers within hours. It grows in lawns everywhere. Purple flower spikes. The entire plant is medicinal. It costs absolutely nothing. Number 9. Elecampane, the deep lung rebuilder. Everything so far has addressed acute conditions. Elecampane is different. Inula helenium is the plant for when the infection is gone but the lungs haven't recovered, when the chest cold became chronic respiratory weakness that simply won't resolve. The root contains sesquiterpene lactones with antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory effects specifically targeted at respiratory tissue. Research has identified elecampane compounds as effective against Mycobacterium tuberculosis in laboratory studies, significant enough to be published in peer-reviewed journals. Traditional use: a slow simmered root decoction taken in regular doses over weeks or months. This is not a quick fix. It's a rebuilder, working slowly, deeply, restoring respiratory tissue from the inside out. For anyone who has never fully recovered lung function after a serious respiratory illness, this plant deserves serious attention. Number 10. Andrographis, the king of bitters. Most Westerners have never heard of it. In Southeast Asia, India and Scandinavia, it has been household medicine for centuries. Andrographis paniculata, the king of bitters. A Cochrane systematic review, the gold standard of medical evidence, concluded Andrographis was superior to placebo for treating upper respiratory infections. Multiple randomized controlled trials show it reduces cold and flu duration by nearly half in some studies. The active andrographolides directly modulate immune response, reduce inflammation, and have direct antiviral activity. Research also shows significant liver protective effects. Why it stayed unknown in the West, it grows in tropical Asia and can't be patented. Without patent potential, pharmaceutical companies had no interest. So it stayed in Asian medicine cabinets, while Western medicine developed synthetic antivirals with a fraction of the safety profile. If you're realizing that the healing knowledge our great-grandparents carried in their heads was more sophisticated than anything sold in a pharmacy, hit that like button right now, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment. Which plant has surprised you most so far? I read every single one. 10 more to go, and this is where it gets truly extraordinary.
Number 11. Usnea, the antibiotic growing on trees. Not technically a plant, a lichen, that pale green hair hanging from tree branches in damp forests. You've seen it, you've ignored it. Usnea contains usnic acid, with documented broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against gram-positive bacteria, including Staphylococcus aureus, and, critically, some strains of MRSA, the antibiotic-resistant bacteria that has become one of the most dangerous threats in modern medicine. The fact that Native American, Chinese, and European healers, with no contact between them, independently developed the same use for Usnea is one of the strongest validations traditional medicine offers. When healers on opposite sides of the planet arrive at the same medicine, they are observing something real. For topical wound infections and respiratory infections, Usnea tincture delivers genuine antimicrobial power without contributing to the resistance crisis, destroying the effectiveness of conventional antibiotics. Number 12. Barberry. 2,000 years of proof. Berberis vulgaris. Used in Persian, Ayurvedic, Chinese, and Native American medicine for over 2 millennia. A thorny shrub with yellow flowers and red berries, containing the same remarkable compound as Oregon grape, berberine, but at higher concentrations. Clinical research scope. Antimicrobial against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. Blood sugar reduction comparable to metformin in some trials. Cholesterol improvement, liver protection, and treatment of infectious diarrhea more effectively than some conventional antibiotics. With antibiotic resistance escalating globally, berberine retains effectiveness against multiple drug-resistant strains that conventional antibiotics no longer touch. Barberry was abandoned when synthetic antibiotics arrived and seemed to make it obsolete. Now that those antibiotics are failing, it's getting the second look it should have received much sooner. Number 13. Turmeric, the golden medicine they dismissed for decades. Over 12,000 published peer-reviewed studies. That is what it took for Western medicine to take seriously what Indian healers knew 4,000 years ago. Curcuma longa. Curcumin, its active compound, inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes targeted by pharmaceutical NSAIDs, but without the gastrointestinal damage, cardiovascular risk, and kidney stress of long-term NSAID use. A 2019 study found curcumin as effective as fluoxetine, a leading antidepressant, for mild to moderate depression. Clinical trials confirm benefits for osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, and metabolic syndrome. The bioavailability problem is real. Curcumin alone absorbs poorly. Combined with black pepper's piperine, absorption increases by up to 2,000%. Traditional Indian medicine always combined them. That wasn't culinary habit. That was pharmacological precision developed over centuries. You cannot patent a root that has grown in India for 4 millennia. So mainstream medicine called it unproven, while the traditional world kept using it and getting results. Number 14. Lobelia, the respiratory unlocker. Lobelia inflata, called Indian tobacco, described by 19th century herbalists as the most valuable plant in medicine, then quietly removed from the American pharmacopoeia when pharmaceutical bronchodilators arrived. Lobelia contains lobeline, an alkaloid that acts as both a bronchodilator, opening constricted airways, and a respiratory stimulant, encouraging deeper breathing. Traditional use covered asthma attacks, severe bronchitis, whooping cough, and any respiratory condition involving constriction. A remarkable detail. Research suggests lobeline may help with nicotine addiction, acting on similar neurological receptors without creating dependence. A plant called Indian tobacco that may help people quit tobacco. Critical note: lobelia demands precise dosing. Too much causes vomiting. The therapeutic and problematic doses are close. This is a plant that requires respect. But within those parameters, it's a respiratory unlocker that modern medicine has not honestly replaced. Number 15. Meadowsweet, the original aspirin. Done better. Aspirin is one of the most widely used drugs in human history. What most people don't know is that it was derived from compounds first identified in this plant. Filipendula ulmaria. Meadowsweet, a wildflower of wet meadows producing fragrant, creamy white flowers in summer, containing natural salicylates, the compounds aspirin is based on. Here's the part that should make pharmaceutical executives uncomfortable. Meadowsweet does not cause stomach irritation. Traditional herbalists actually used it to treat stomach inflammation and ulcers, the exact problem that affects millions of aspirin users annually. When chemists isolated and synthesized salicylic acid, they created something more concentrated and more damaging than the original whole plant. Nature's formulation was more balanced than the pharmaceutical refinement. For headaches, mild arthritis, fever, and pain, meadowsweet tea still works. It just doesn't come with a patent or a profit margin. Number 16. Cat's claw, the rainforest immune weapon. Ancaria tomentosa from the Amazon, used by indigenous Peruvian healers for over 2,000 years for inflammatory conditions, infections, and immune support. The bark contains oxindole alkaloids with profound immune-modulating effects. A clinical trial in inflammation research found cat's claw extract significantly reduced pain and inflammation in rheumatoid arthritis patients. Studies show it reduces TNF-alpha and IL-1, the exact inflammatory markers targeted by expensive biologic drugs costing thousands of dollars monthly with serious infection risks. Cat's claw targets the same markers, costs almost nothing, which is of course the problem from a profit perspective. Traditional use. Bark simmered in water for an hour as a long-term anti-inflammatory and immune tonic. Number 17. Chaparral, the plant they banned that kept working. And here it is, the one I promised. Laurea tridentata, creosote bush. A desert shrub of the American Southwest. Some individual plants believed to be among the oldest living organisms on Earth. Native American healers used it for respiratory conditions, skin infections, inflammatory disease, and as a powerful antioxidant tonic. Chaparral contains NDGA, Nordihydroguaretic acid, one of the most potent antioxidants ever identified in a plant. Studies show genuine antimicrobial, antiviral, and anti-inflammatory effects. Then the FDA issued a warning against internal use, citing reports of liver toxicity. Here is the full context. Fewer than 20 cases of liver toxicity were documented worldwide over decades of widespread use, suggesting individual susceptibility rather than universal risk. Meanwhile, pharmaceutical drugs with dramatically higher liver toxicity rates remain on shelves without similar scrutiny. Researchers worldwide continue studying NDGA for cancer and antiviral applications. The molecule is being actively investigated. The plant containing it has been quietly discouraged from public use. Chaparral represents something important. Not all traditional plants are safe for all people at all doses. That is real and must be respected. But the line between legitimate safety concern and commercially convenient suppression is not always as clear as regulators suggest. Number 18. Feverfew, the migraine medicine patients found first. In the 1970s and 1980s, migraine sufferers in Britain began quietly telling each other about a small, flowering plant that was stopping their migraines more consistently than their prescribed medications. The information spread person to person outside the medical establishment entirely. Eventually, researchers paid attention. Clinical trials followed. The evidence confirmed what those patients already knew. Tanacetum parthenium, feverfew, contains parthenolide, which inhibits platelet aggregation, reduces prostaglandin synthesis, and inhibits serotonin release from platelets, a key mechanism in migraine initiation. Multiple double-blind placebo-controlled trials confirmed that regular feverfew reduces migraine frequency. The key is prevention, not acute treatment. 2 to 3 fresh leaves daily, traditionally in a sandwich because the leaves are intensely bitter, or a standardized extract taken consistently over months. Easy to grow, self-seeds freely. Clinical validation confirmed. Costs essentially nothing. Number 19. Ashwagandha, the adaptogen they couldn't ignore forever. For 3,000 years, Ayurvedic medicine built an entire category around plants that help the body adapt to stress, building resilience against the physical consequences of chronic pressure. Withania somnifera, ashwagandha, the most studied adaptogen on Earth. Randomized controlled trials demonstrate it significantly reduces serum cortisol, improves standardized anxiety scores, enhances physical endurance, improves sleep quality and duration, and supports thyroid function in subclinical hypothyroidism. A 2019 study in Medicine showed significantly lower cortisol, better sleep, and dramatically reduced anxiety compared to placebo, with no significant adverse effects. The withanolides in ashwagandha appear to recalibrate the stress response system's sensitivity rather than simply blocking it pharmaceutically. Traditional use: root powder in warm milk with honey as a nightly tonic. A practice so simple and ancient it survived 3,000 years before Western science finally confirmed why it worked. Number 20. Sweet wormwood, the plant that won a Nobel Prize. And here we are, the one I promised would be the most extraordinary on this entire list. Artemisia annua, sweet wormwood. A weedy annual growing across Asia and naturalized across much of the world, used in Chinese medicine for over 2,000 years for recurring fevers, what we now recognize as malaria. In 1972, a Chinese researcher named Tu Yu, working in secret during the Cultural Revolution, isolated a compound from sweet wormwood called artemisinin. When malaria parasites evolved resistance to chloroquine and hundreds of thousands were dying, artemisinin worked. Artemisinin-based combination therapies became the frontline treatment for malaria worldwide. They have saved an estimated several million lives. In 2015, Tu Yu received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for isolating a compound from a plant that Chinese healers had already been using for 2,000 years. And the story doesn't stop there. Artemisinin and its derivatives now show significant activity against certain cancer cell lines, selectively targeting cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue relatively unharmed. Multiple studies across different cancer types have produced results compelling enough that oncologists are paying serious attention. A Nobel Prize, millions of lives, and emerging cancer research. All from a weedy annual that grows in disturbed ground on multiple continents, that ancient healers used because they paid attention to what worked. Smash that like button if this video shifted something in how you see medicine and healing. Drop a comment. Which plant stopped you cold? Which one are you finding this week? Are you Team Comfrey and Yarrow? Team Artemisinin and Turmeric? Team Meadowsweet and Ashwagandha? I read every comment. Subscribe and ring that notification bell. Every week we connect ancient healing wisdom with modern research, and we're building a community that refuses to believe the only medicine worth taking comes in a pharmaceutical bottle. The plants are waiting. They always have been. See you in the next one.